Today we're going to talk about Lammas, or Lughnasadh, the pagan celebration of the first harvest. Lammas, also known as Lughnasadh, is one of the first harvest festivals of 3 harvest festivals in the Wheel of the Year. Being as this is the first one, it covers, of course, the first things to produce, which would be the corn, the grains, basically all stalks that grow straight up. With Lammas or Lughnasadh, Lammas translates as loaf mass, which celebrates, of course, the grains and creating the foods, because as you know, it's all about the food, that are going to be harvested at this time. Lughnasadh, on the other hand, is named after the Celtic god Lugh, which represents the sun and also represents inspiration, basically the sun coming out within us to light our way through the approaching dark half of the year. Because once we shift past Litha, which is the summer solstice, each day starts to get a little bit darker and darker. So we start to see the very beginnings of it during Lammas, although we still feel the heat of the summer. Most people consider Litha, the summer solstice, the beginning of summer. That's actually the peak of summer. Even though you are celebrating a harvest, there is always that awareness that the dark times are coming where we can finally start to slow down. So that's why that first harvest is so crucial, because we learn to appreciate what we have produced. So that's really more of a time to sit back and think about the appreciation for the earth, but also the appreciation for all that we have done, and giving us the time to kind of take that breath and to celebrate all the sacrifices that we made to get ourselves there. The idea of sacrifice, the god known as John Barleycorn being cut down to produce for the betterment of everyone else. So we always recognize the sacrifice in our first harvest by making sure that we have the seeds from that first harvest that are going to be planted to produce the following harvest. And it just goes on and on and on. Knowing that whenever you have your crop coming in, you have your harvest coming in, within it are the seeds for all future harvests. You want to think of that almost as we think of the woman who's carrying a female child, because within that female child, even though she has not been born yet, she carries all the eggs she's ever going to have. So every mother actually carries her grandchild at one point in her womb. And that's really the idea behind Lammas. The wheel is constantly turning, and we recognize how even though we have this harvest, we are still planting the seeds for all of our future. The thing about this particular Sabbat is that a lot of people don't even realize that it exists when it's at this major shift of the year. When we talk about the Wheel of the Year, it first cuts in half at 2 of the more important Sabbats that people tend to be aware of. Of course, Samhain, also known as Halloween, and then we have Beltane, also known as May Day. Then when we cut it crossways again, then you have Imbolc, which is part of the way between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, and then you have Lammas, which is part of the way between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. So there's a very big energetic shift there for the earth, because it finally starts to produce that first harvest. So it is what's called one of the greater Sabbats, and that's why it is important to really observe how everything is finally starting to shift out of summer and you're getting the first inklings of fall. It's a balance between what we have and what will be. It's a big bread time because of the loaf mass, because of Lammas. It's really about baking starting to come back in. The corn, all of those crops that people have to come together to gather for that first big production. And then there's always a ceremony around the first cutting that has been harvested. And that is to acknowledge the sacrifice of John Barleycorn, who is represented through that harvest. And there is a bit of solemnity there. But then, of course, it does erupt in celebration, because that is the way anybody would want to be remembered. Because Lammas does center around the community coming together to harvest, there can be competition or feats of strength. That's always a fun thing that usually after the harvest is done. If you think about the corns and the grains and all the things that are usually harvested, what do they create? You have beer, you have breads, you have all of these other things coming into the mix, and then you have community. Pretty fun times happening around this time of the year, which is a good thing because you're celebrating the seeds that you planted 6 months earlier during Imbolc. So it's a way of not only celebrating the harvest of the earth, but also the harvest of yourself, seeing the intentions that you put out coming to fruition, and finally being able to produce for you. A very large part of the celebration is the blessing of the brooms. So you have the broom corn. All of the things that produce the broom come together during the Sabbat into this beautiful form of protection for your home. When we bless it and we celebrate it, it's a way of knowing that our time is coming where we're going to not be outside so much. That dark time of the year is coming and we're going to be inside. So we're going to take that part of that first harvest, bring it into the home, and allow it to protect everyone within. So it's a beautiful thing to do at that time, to celebrate it. And even if you have a broom that has already been blessed, I would re-bless it every year around Lammas. Why not bring more ritual and magic into your life?